Good morning, good morning. I hope that's not me dinging. I don't think it is. We're so happy to have you here. I'm Tamara Balis, and I have to share with you, first of all, we are filming this for folks who can't make it, on a Friday morning at 8:30 or 8:45. And I'm really excited about this presentation. I did Montessori Discipline for the Home last year, and I felt like it was our weakest presentation of the year. And so it's completely revamped, and I have a stack of parenting books I've been reading, and so you all this is the maiden voyage, so I'm letting you know. Now, these are all methodology we use in Montessori, but I haven't ever seen it framed like this, and it's really a beautiful way I think, to talk about it. So, so I just want to share that with you right out of the gate. And I want to be really super clear with you that I am a mom, and I am a completely imperfect mom, and I am raising two wonderful and imperfect children with a wonderful and imperfect husband, and we are an imperfect family who is actually exceedingly happy most of the time. And so what I'm sharing with you today does not come out of like I know it all in any way, shape, or form. In fact, I shared with my girls, I was going to share this with you last night. My girls are in charge of cleaning up the kitchen after dinner every night, and we went downstairs to have a grown-up conversation, right? And my youngest came down in tears that my oldest, who's 14, was trying to put her in the freezer. Okay, so I just want you to know that like this does not, there's no magic pixie dust that makes all that go away. Right? And the beauty is, because we use these tools and some of the tools that we shared at the Empowering Your Children, that in about 4 minutes, they had talked to each other. We did an exercise where they each took responsibility for what they could, and we were hugging in 4 minutes, right? There was no love lost in the house, even though, so that's really what we're going to talk about today is how do you navigate this? How do you discipline your children? How do you work with your children in a way? It's not like all of the stuff goes away, right? But that the connection remains intact and that you're building those skills, right? So right now, what does discipline mean to you? When you hear the word discipline, what does that mean to you? What was discipline for you growing up? When your parents were disciplining you, what did it look like? Corporal punishment, right? Right? What do you do now, right? And I'm going to have you partner share with each other. Now, if you came here with somebody else that you are close to, I'd ask that you talk to somebody else so that you can expand, right? Because you're going to go home and talk about this, right? So what are you doing now if your child doesn't follow instructions? What are your go-tos? And are they effective? Are they changing the behavior? Is the child learning the skill? How do you feel about it, right? So it's interesting, when I looked this up, so there are two definitions. Mortification by scourging, I don't even know if I'm pronouncing that, oneself, right? Which is actually a lot of times what old school discipline was. Punishment was designed to really mortify you out of the behavior, right? Or you have instruction and knowledge. So we in Montessori operate from that discipline is actually education. Period. Always. Right? So for us, what are the 4 goals? What do we always want our discipline to provide? Always. We want it to change the behavior, right? Build the brain. Like, we need to be clear that and we'll get into this a little bit more, but when we go to that place of yelling or getting physical, the brain, and this is proven, this is current brain research, it actually gives off cortisol, which is toxic. The brain cannot It cannot, the part of the brain that learns cannot be activated while the amygdala is activated. So as soon as the amygdala in our children gets activated, they are in fight or flight. They cannot learn what we're teaching them. We can have the most amazing lecture, right? Does not go in. But what it does when we punish, what happens? Okay, so the child's brain, oftentimes they don't shut the gate. Who doesn't shut? Somebody doesn't shut the gate, right? So it doesn't shut the gate. They know that what they're doing is not working, right? And as soon as we go to yelling or punishment, their brain goes to making us wrong instead of actually addressing the issue. They have stopped focusing on themselves, and they are now in, my mom is so mean. Right? It goes away from what we actually are trying to do for them, right? We want them to build skills, life skills. Our commitment is to them having these skills for a lifetime, right? And we want them to have self-discipline. That's right. Does anybody have anything else that they think should be a goal for discipline? So when we go to timeout, spanking, we go to yelling, we go to domination, they go to a stress response, which we just talked about. The brain goes to, the amygdala gets activated, it's fight or flight. They literally say, even if you're scolding a child, when they go to that space, 23 minutes it takes for that to actually go away after they feel like they're safe. Our brains are wired to keep us safe. When they don't feel safe, it's the difference of what we call a receptive and the receptive brain. It includes adults, includes significant others. Like when we go to that space with adults too. I'll tell you, with my husband, early on, he used to yell a lot, right? He came from a yelling family. There was no way that we were going to work through when I was getting yelled at. It was not going to happen because I went to fight or flight. Now, I did that. I made him feel unsafe differently. Women have different tools, right? It's not like he felt completely, right? Let's be clear, right? So, but this is not a relationship workshop, right? So if they're if their brain is receptive, if they're in reactionary, you're dealing with somebody who's in fight or flight or freeze. Well, it takes about 20 minutes for them to get out of reactionary after they feel safe. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. As long as she doesn't feel like she's being punished. Because as soon as they think they're being punished, they're not reflecting on themselves anymore, or on their behavior, or on what didn't work for them. They're thinking about how mean you are. Or if she thinks that you're separating her because she's being punished. Which is oftentimes, I mean, that's what I was using with Sia when she was young, is I'd isolate her, you know? Yeah. And that's the thing, is to be able to say, I'm really frustrated right now. You're owning it. I'm really frustrated right now. Not you, let's be clear, not you are making me so frustrated. Right? They're not making you so frustrated. Let's be clear. If we don't already have frustration in our system, can anybody make us frustrated? If we're not already carrying around anger, can somebody make us angry? It's us. It's what we come to the table with. It just brings it up. What we're trying to do for our children is actually allow them to have a safe place to get that up and out, so they're not carrying it around the way that we have. Again, okay, so I want you to take a little bit of time. It doesn't have to be a lot, but I'm going to have you sit and think about a behavior and why the child may be behaving that way. What's the lesson the child needs and how's the best way to teach it. Does that make sense? Okay, all right. Right. But I mean, it's a natural consequence. There are natural consequences. We're not talking about that there are no consequences. I'm not talking about being a helicopter parent where you make everything okay because they're not doing what they need to do, right? So Georgie had one day where she wore pajamas to school. Like we leave at a certain time, right? You have to be ready to go at that time. So she wore her pajamas one day. The rest, that was it. It was handled, right? So I would just, that's a big question, and there's not one easy answer for it. It's looking at the why behind it. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Yeah. The trouble with incentivizing is just so you know, it does work short term. It doesn't work long term. And what they found even with adults, when something's incentivized, the production goes up significantly initially and then it drops way below what it was. So it works, you know, it'll be first a CD and then it's a toy and then it's a this and then it's now it's not big enough and it's got to get bigger and now it's 2 scoops of ice cream and now it's a trip to the zoo and now like, and that's what happens, right? Yeah. Sure. Yeah. Right. Sharing the why, right? But that's not an incentive. You're not rewarding. You're telling her, you're helping her visualize her day and get present to what she's about, what she's stepping into, which is beautiful, right? Like, oh my gosh, when you get there on time, don't you feel so good walking in? Sure. And I would caution, I know the older one's not here, but I would caution that actually for the older one, it's really good for them to be involved. And even from like age 3, they can help make their lunch and they can participate in getting out the door, which I find helps them understand the schedule and actually has them be more invested, you know. Oh, yeah. And you're preparing the environment for the toddler, right? You're having it. And I get that. I promise you, I am not saying, I think parenting is the hardest job we have by far. Like, right? I run a school. I think being a wife is easier than being a great mom. Like, it's very challenging. Okay. Yes. I have to keep moving after this. Yes. No, you just reminded me one thing, like grocery store. Yeah. Yeah. But I realized one of those giant has those little customer training. Yes. Yes. Getting him to do the part and getting him to put food on those. Yep. Just giving them a job. Once they give them a list. I mean, we do a whole nother class on how to have them be involved in that kind of thing and building their self-confidence. That's a huge part of it, is having them be involved, right? So, great. Okay, so these are kind of the dig-in tools. First, clear, consistent expectations, high expectations. We're not saying let them do whatever they want. I need to be super clear about that. I find that culturally what's happening is you're swinging to really, really actually giving them everything at any given moment, and they don't necessarily have those standards, or there's a rigidity. And really, this is that kind of tightrope in between, right? Where we're clear on what the expectations are, the schedule is well-defined, well set, and you're operating within that framework for whatever it is that works for you and your family, okay? Find your grounding. Before you go into any of this, you have to find your own grounding. If your reactive brain is activated, You need to leave the situation and come back when you can actually be compassionate, patient. Think about it this way, okay? The way that you treat your child when you are angry or frustrated will be, this is what they say, this is the research, and actually you can back this up, will be the relationship they choose for their lifetime. And it will be the way they treat themselves, and will decide their self-compassion or not. Do you want them to choose somebody who yells at them, scolds, like, right? Like, you got to think about, we're building that framework in their brain for how do they deal with it when they're upset. We tell them not to throw a temper tantrum. Are we throwing temper tantrums? I know they look different, but adults have, we call it babooning in our house. When the adult is going, and rah, 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 and you rah, rah, rah. Like, oh, are you babooning? Got it. Okay, you know. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So I struggle with, like, when I come back around later, I mean, I always want to be transparent about, like, that, you know, that was me, that wasn't you, I'm
Yep.
sorry, I got upset.
Yep.
I guess struggling with, like saying, like, oh, darn, no, I totally lost my question.
Well, I'm glad you said that, though. It's about, she's repairing the relationship, right? Do you know anybody who, when they behave like that, never takes any responsibility? It's like the worst thing, right? The best thing you can do is actually own up. I handled that so poorly. I handled a couple days ago, I handled it so poorly with Georgie. I really got after her for something small, and it was in the morning, right? Like, right? And I said, I am so sorry, that was not how I should ever talk to you. And she said, it's okay. And no, it's not. I don't want you to learn that skill. That's not how I want to operate. And she said, well, I forgive you. She gave me a hug, and that was it, right? Like, but I had to go in and repair the relationship, so she's not carrying the weight of my emotion all day. Yep. Sure. I think you go in and you say, I'm so sorry I yelled at you. You can have big feelings, and we're going to get into that, and you can't hit. Right.
Something like, I really need you to listen. I explained why it was important, and I'm sorry I got mad, but then I feel like it gets lost, and then I'm still blaming the child for my appropriate emotion. I feel like that's what gets.
It is, and we cannot make them responsible. So this is tricky, right? This emotion conversation, because we can't make the children responsible for our emotions. We can't make our spouse responsible for our emotions, right? They're not responsible. We're responsible, and we have to teach them how to have emotional intelligence. And we need to tell them when we're frustrated or angry and take ownership of that without blame. And we have to make it okay for them to have emotions too. Right? It's so, like, that world of it, they're just now starting to dig into the emotions in the brain, how they impact the brain, how they impact the body. There's so much going on in that right now. Marina, we're gonna dig in a little, okay? Right. And I'm sorry. Yeah, right? Okay, so be present, give the gift of your full attention. How often are you trying to discipline while you're also cooking dinner, and or you're on your phone, or you just got an email from your boss that something's due tomorrow that he didn't even tell you? Like, you're navigating all of that. It's a lot. So in that moment, giving them your full attention, I will tell you, if you can discipline yourself around this, you will find that they don't have to have as much time, because they're not going to be pulling all the time, if when you're present with them, you are really present. It's a time saver in the end. Yeah. So actually, one of the tools from Hand in Hand is called special time. And you set a timer, and they get to be completely in control of the time. Like, they get to decide. Now, there's no screens and no food for us. Those are our rules. And my husband has made a rule that he will no longer serve as a horse. Like, just saying, okay? He's like, I am 54. I am no longer, like, but, you know, so, and that time is, I used to think the same thing. It was reinforcing this. What she's showing you, she really needs you. Because she's seeking that connection, and they will take, if you can give her a set amount of time on a timer and say, I have undivided attention for you for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, right? And you do whatever she wants to do for that time. Now, sometimes they get to the end of it and they have a meltdown, right? I want to be clear, we're not trying to avoid the meltdowns. We actually need that emotion to come up and out. It's not that they have a meltdown and then you're fueling more meltdowns. You're actually giving them a space to have stuff that come out safely. It's when it gets stuffed and we tell them to shut it down that actually then it has to keep coming up over and over and over because it's not able to come out. So you give them that time where they get to choose. Now, my youngest, her games always seem to be about something where I have to serve her, or, right? Like, so the first time we did it, she was a queen, I was her handmaiden, and we were having a funeral for King Christos, who's my husband. Christos walks by, he's like, what in the hell is going on around here? I'm like, it's special time, I'm trying this out, right? Now what she does is she has me chase her around the house, and she says over and over, I'm the slowest person in the world and you can't even catch me. Like that, like there's something about like having the power to be able to, and great. So I race around the house, which, and you don't get to roll your eyes. You don't get, this is the most fun thing I have ever done in my entire life, right? There's so much power for them in having those moments. It actually really pays forward the relationship being intact and them having that ability then to navigate these other things. Because what you're doing, let's be clear, you're building their emotional stability. Every time you're making investments in their emotional ability and their skills in that way as a human being. Does that answer your question? Okay, connect, always empathy. I used to think there were times where I didn't need to bring empathy. I needed to bring a strong hand, right? Have you ever heard that saying, you know, I'll give her something to worry about, right? Like this, the way that parents used to say that stuff, right? It's always connection, always empathy. What they need us to, and this works on significant others as well. I just want you to know. Like when they're upset, connection and empathy. What happens is discipline is about teaching, and teaching requires kids to be receptive to learning, right? Receptivity results from connection. Therefore, that's when they can learn. It's that simple. When we connect, they can learn. If you want to change the behavior, there has to be connection present. I'm not saying you can't change the behavior by the fear or anger or those things for the short term. When I'm always talking about long-term solutions. Always. The other thing to pay attention to is they should not feel like you love them more when they're behaving. It's really easy. Think about how often we communicate that love is conditional on their behavior. Truth is, we love them no matter what, right? And we love the kid we got. And there is nothing that we're going to do to have them be a different kid. You got the kid you got. And I have these conversations with parents sometimes when they have children who are coming in with atypical learning needs and they're really concerned. It's okay. We love the child we have. They're all perfect in their own imperfect way, right? So really getting present to when are we communicating, I don't love you because you are not clearing the table. I don't love you because you're mean to your brother. Really getting present to that. Yeah.
I certainly agree with the slide, but kind of like as a parallel, is it okay or appropriate to like communicate with them that their actions reflect on our feelings? So
Sure.
not that we don't love them, but like, you know, when you hit your brother, like not when you hurt him, but it makes me mad. Or, you know.
Yeah.
Because
I would be careful with that language about makes me sad.
I mean, I'm just, but the fact that they understand that not only are there consequences to them, but
Yeah.
you know, what they do impacts how
Yeah.
you know, my feelings.
Well, I would stay away from having it be about you, but you could point out to him or her that her brother, look at your brother's face, how is he feeling? And have them, that's part of developing empathy and those emotional awareness is to have them, but for us, it's not about us. It's about their development, right? Right? Does that make sense? Because it becomes, it becomes, how many of you had a parent who said to you, oh, like, okay, this is I wish you would get married. I'm so embarrassed with my friends. Or, the way you behaved here just was so, like, I'm so sad about whatever it is, like it's control. It is an attempt to control your behavior through those other emotions. Yeah. Not at all. You're setting a family value, right? Now, the truth is that you're going to raise them with those values, and then they get to choose what their values are for their own family, right? But the idea of, for us, a family value is contribution. They're clear. I tell them all the time, I'm not raising princesses, right? I have no interest in that. I'm raising people who are going to be active citizens. That's my commitment to the world, right? So that's a different thing than saying, do you guys get the distinction there? Okay. So what can you do? You observe. We talked about this a little. Listen and get curious. Really, as much as you can, when you're able to step out of it, and you may tag out and if you have somebody else who's helping raise your children, you're able to tag out, but really to listen and observe and make sure that you're getting curious about where the behavior's coming from. I'm going to skip this because I want to make sure we get through everything. But when you're seeing these behaviors, where could the behavior be coming from? What's the lesson, and how do you teach the lesson? We're going to go into redirection as a big tool, but remember that you have to connect first. You cannot redirect until the connection is present. So this is the redirection strategies. We're going to go through all of these. Reduce words, embrace emotions, describe, don't preach, involve your child in the discipline, reframe a no into a conditional yes. We'll talk about that. Okay, of course. Emphasize the positive, creatively approach the situation, and teach mindset tools. I'm going to have a slide on all of these. Okay. Okay. All right, so reduce words. Now, one of the mistakes I make, and my husband, who's Greek, is even more long-winded, right, is to talk way too long. Okay? So let's be clear. They can hear about this much, right? You have to choose your words carefully. Now, notice, This is not, you left your shoes at the front door again. That is very different than, I see shoes at the front door. Why do we frame it like that? It's neutral. Right. Now, when you say, tell me your name. Sophia. Sophia, go, you left your shoes at the front door. Please go get them. What happens to her? Yeah, and she'll go get them, and she'll put them away, but her brain does not turn on. We are literally, every time we do the thinking for them, we're shutting it down, and there's no investment in her actually thinking, So you say, I noticed you haven't started your homework. And you're giving a space for them to fill it in. Does that make sense? Okay. Embrace emotions. We've talked about this a little, but one of the things that I find is that we as parents can be very, we don't want our children to experience negative emotions. So we walk around and we put them in this bubble so that they don't have to, you want another banana? I'm going to keep using that. I love that example. No, it's perfect. No, but like, oh, another banana? Okay. Or, oh, you don't like that doll? We'll get you another one. Or even, please share with your sister. I don't want to share. And then it's, okay, don't share, right? Let's just shush. Right? And that does not help your child at all. They need to have space to have the emotion and then still be held to the standard. Right? So I use this because she is much younger here. This is my daughter many years ago, and her sister and cousins got up in the tree. She couldn't get up on her own. My rule is, if you can't, you have to, when you're playing, you've got to be able to do it on your own. I'm not going to put her up where they had a hard time getting down, right? She was so frustrated, angry. Why can't you just help me? Right? And we let her have that. And then it was okay. It's okay. We don't have to rescue them, and we do not need to make it all better for them all the time. Now, this is where, David, the world is not going to make it better for them. I don't have anybody walking around being like, oh, you're disappointed, Tamara? Let me take care of that for you. Let me make sure your path is just so smooth and only nice things happen to you all the time. That is not my experience. I've got to be able to deal with obstacles and frustrations and life not going the way. So making room for them to have those and making it okay, rather than trying to solve it all the time for them. Yes, ma'am. Correct. Yeah, and they're going to learn how to manage those emotions rather than stuffing them, right? Because I want you to know, just because your child has temper tantrums at 2 does not mean they're going to be screaming at their spouse when they're 60, right? Does not translate, right? Chris, would you mind filling this water for me? Thanks. Be aware when we don't acknowledge. Now, I hope my parents never watch this, but this is where my parents really struggled. It was always, oh, you're fine. You're okay. I remember coming home heartbroken. I broke up with a boyfriend in my first year of college, and I was heartbroken. And my mom said, and I know, listen, she's an amazing woman. She said, oh, well, next. A lot of fish in the sea. Right? And so she just didn't get, there was not a real understanding of that depth of, right? How often do we do that to our children? You're okay. You're just being dramatic. Come on. It's not that big of a deal.
Like when they fall down and you're like, okay, it's okay, get up. What are you supposed to say?
You fell down. Are you okay? Are you okay? That's actually one that my folks, that's exactly when my kids would fall down at little, they'd be like, right? Grit. They're developing grit, they think. That's grit, right? They'd say, you're okay, get up, brush yourself off. There was no room to be upset or frustrated or whatever, right? And so instead, they fall down, you say, are you okay? Or you don't say anything until they show you what they need. You certainly are not, though, going to run over and say, oh, honey, okay? Because that is where we really get into trouble as parents, because then you're making them into this little hothouse flower. Please don't send them to Montessori then. No, I'm just joking. I'm totally joking. But like really, it's saying you're not giving them that, because part of what happens is you're telling them how they feel is not valid, right? And what ends up happening is they stop telling you things. They disconnect because you haven't really validated where they're coming from, right? And they learn to stuff their feelings and how to hide vulnerability. Now, culturally, we don't have a lot of vulnerability. There's not a lot of room for it. Yet they're saying the most powerful leaders are people who are vulnerable, right? So, tools for supporting growth. Help them distinguish between their feelings and their actions. This is really big. They are allowed to have any feeling they want. They may not act any way they want. They have to act within the framework of what works, but distinguishing between the two. This is all, yes, a part of embracing emotion. These are my supplements, right? So it's okay to feel angry at your sister, and you can't hit her. We can't hit. Or I understand that you're really frustrated. That's understandable. But you cannot grab the truck or whatever it is, right? Does that make sense? If they're screaming, they're not in their brain is not in receptive mode. So children are brilliant. They're brilliant. They can understand so much. Reduce your words, right? You only want to, yes. Well, I want you to think about somebody who's given you a long explanation for something. Do you listen to the whole thing? How much do you listen to? That's what you have. I'm amazed at how often we think that children should behave differently than we function as adults. Why are they different? We treat them with so much less respect than we give ourselves in so many ways because we think that they should listen. I remember actually just the other night with the dishwasher, the freezer thing. Those of you who missed the first part, last night my 14-year-old tried to shove my 9-year-old in the freezer. Okay, so I just started with that so you'd know that I am not a perfect parent and I have no perfect children, right? And my husband then started talking about violence and how violence is unacceptable. And he's right. I gave him 2 sentences and I was like, okay, that's good. That's all they can hear, right? Now we're going to let them talk to each other. Okay, they did active listening and then they said what they each could take responsibility for, and we were in a family hug it was probably within about 7 minutes. Yeah, family hug. That's not a tool here, but it's what we do. We call it the whoa, whoa, whoas. So when Christos and I, when Sia, my first, was little, every time we'd hug, she'd come want to get in the middle of it, and we called it whoa, whoa, whoa. So now the whole family we go whoa, 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 whoa. So, but it's how we end when there's been because part of what, thank goodness for Hand in Hand, but it's taught me, is that when somebody is emotional or upset, they need love. They don't need us to correct them. They don't need, that comes later, They just need to be loved. And my husband, the first time I started loving him when he was like, right, so now the girls will tell you, like, even if I say I'm in a bad mood, they'll say, let's make sure that we take care of her. So if I had a hard day, I am not kidding, I have not taught her to do this, but my youngest will have a tray, because this is all since hand in hand. I walk in, she's like, okay, Mom, go. I'm like, I have to go to the bathroom, put on my pajamas first. Okay, whatever's happening. But she brings a tray, and there's tea there, and she rubs my feet, and she brushes my hair, and she puts flowers on my pillow, because they've learned, instead of isolating or being angry or upset at the person who's having a hard time, you're tending to them. That's part of what we do as family, is we take care of each other. And it's such a different way than either my husband and I were parented, but it's created this real sense of love and connection in the house that I am so profoundly grateful for. I think that my big work in the world, like my mission, is actually safety and belonging for all people, for children, for all people, safety and belonging. And that has really fed that. So, and Montessori obviously feeds that. So we talked about this. Children are responsible for their own happiness, okay? Describe, don't preach. So this is another one, Nicole. Say what you see. You're throwing cards. That makes it hard to play the game, right? That's not preaching. That's different. It's just describing. You're not dressed and we need to leave in 5 minutes. Let's their brain turn on, right? It is. It makes you empathetic, right? Like all of a sudden it's not she's trying to get you. But I want to be clear that I'm not saying that you give in to the request, if it's or the behavior. What I'm saying is that you're going to love them through it, and you're going to connect, and you're going to offer connection, and right? It's different. Okay? Okay? Anything else on that? Right. You give them the same love, right? So there's this great example about the blue cup, like the child wants the blue cup. Have you ever had this? They ask for the blue cup and then they don't want the blue cup. Then they want the red cup. It's like the banana, right? But the truth is you're not going to actually go and then get the red cup, right? You're going to say, you asked for the blue cup, we're going to stick with the blue cup. I want the red cup. I hear that you want the red cup, and I hear that you're very disappointed. And you're going to be with them for that until it's out, because it's not really about the cup. And they just need that connection and that love, which is what all human beings need, right? Does that answer your question? Okay. This is part to describe don't preach, but just it avoids putting the child on the defensive. As soon as you go to preaching and make wrong, what do we do when somebody's making us wrong? Right. They're wrong. We dig in. They're so awful. All of that. Children, same thing. Why would it be different if it's a parent coming at you? It's not, right? Gives the child the opportunity to observe and engages them in conversation. So, ask questions. This has been such a gift for me. Even, okay, for example, in the mornings we don't have, there's no screens, right? The whole iPhone, all of that, right? So this morning I walked in and my oldest was on her phone. And she doesn't usually do that. And so instead of saying, why are you on your phone? I said, what are you working on there? And she said, I forgot to turn in my assignment last night and I'm sending it in. And then she went back out to it, right? So instead of me going in and assuming there was something wrong, I asked the question and our relationship stayed intact. Just an example. 4 years ago, I would have gone in and said, the rule is there's no eye touch in the morning, or there's no screens in the morning, you are breaking the rule, right? That is not the approach. The approach is what's really going on here, right? Part of what happens when we scold and preach and we punish, punishment actually teaches them to lie, to actually avoid you knowing the truth of what's happening. Okay? I love this next one, and I use this all the time. This is actually, this bidirectional dialogue is from Ross Greene's work. He's amazing. He's children do well if they can. I've noticed, and gives them the opportunity to actually give you an answer. At which point we don't scold, right? Then it's a real answer. Sometimes you're gonna find out things that you cannot even, like, that are very surprising to you. You didn't know they were feeling that way. You didn't know that they had a fight with their friend at school. You didn't know that whatever it is, right? So it opens up the dialogue rather than it being you coming in, right, and one directional, a monologue. So you're going to educate, you're going to identify the needed skills, and then teach the needed skills when the brain is receptive, okay? So if there is, for example, what's one of these things that, okay, the hitting. What's the skill that's missing when they're hitting? Yes, the ability to share how they feel. So when they're in the receptive brain, you're going to be able to say to them, okay, remember yesterday you were hitting your brother, right? Let's talk about things that you could say, right? So you're going to build the skill with them when the brain is receptive. Means that you have to do some thinking about what are those skills that they really need to build. I will say, since we've started doing this work with our children, our marriage has improved exponentially because we got present to empathy. Neither of us were really great at empathy before. When we got present to what empathy does to a relationship and started bringing it to our marriage, it made a huge difference. There's been a huge shift, really, truly. So, and having that language, right, to help support those pieces in that work. Reframe the no into a conditional yes, right? So part of what happens when the brain hears no, and I have to tell you, I'm like this, and my husband teased me about this for first 10 years of our marriage. He's like, you just don't like me to tell you no. I was like, I don't really like anybody to tell me no, to be honest. And I didn't like the way he said it. I would say, you want to go out? And no, right? If he had used this with me, which he does now, right, and said, I don't really feel like doing that tonight, but could we think about it next week? It's a completely different experience, right? And what you're helping the child do is learn how to look out in the future. You're helping build delayed gratification rather than just shutting down the conversation. There are times when no is no. No, you may not put your finger in the socket. Ever. Like, you're never going to be able to do that, right? No, you're never going to be able to play Game Boy all day long. There are some no's are no's. But but instead of putting your finger in the socket, I do have a place you could put your finger. Why don't you help me, make some cookies? I don't know, whatever it is. You can put your finger in the pot. Like, there's other looking at what the need is and speaking to and having it not be that you're just shutting it down, because you got to get, he's just curious. Just curious. Right. It's in his blood, right? Does anybody have a no that you're thinking about that might be your challenge by turning it into a conditional yes? No, you can't be on your phone all the time. So perfect. Let's talk about that one. Especially, it's a 12-year-old, right? Okay. So I notice that you're spending a lot of time on your phone, right? That's outside of our family values. Can we create an agreement that would work? What do you think would work, right? And you're involving them in that conversation. So it's not no. Now, it may be, can I get on my phone now? Not right now. Our agreement says you can get on your phone again. I hear you. I hear you. Does that make sense? Okay. emphasize the positive rather than you interrupted me, please let me finish. Like, look for language that can support, because let's be clear, the way you talk to them is how they're going to talk to you and everybody else, right? So the things we say to our children are oftentimes not the things we would say to colleagues. Stop interrupting. Like, we would never say that to a colleague. We'd say, I wasn't quite finished, or let me finish my thought, right? So it's really important that you have expectations for your child in the house, right? And I do a session on Montessori at Home where I talk about chores and those kind of things, and let me speak to that, okay? So what I would recommend is getting clear on what the expectations are ahead, like, and having her agree to the ways that she's gonna contribute. So maybe you give her some choices, right? Because you want them to have power in it, right? So would you like to be in charge of emptying the dishwasher, or setting the table and clearing the table, or whatever it is, right? And then initially you do, part of what the mistake we make with chores culturally is we try to separate the children to do the chores. We send them off. They're gonna go do this. You go clean your room. You go set the table. I'm over here. I'm making, whatever it is. They want to be with us, right? So as much as possible, have the chores be a community activity. When my daughters get resistant, it's really interesting to chores, I start doing the chore with them, and then I can fade out to go do something else, but then they're in the mode. So it's not like you're hovering over, it's more like, oh, you know, she's in charge of, what's she in charge of? Okay, so cleaning up the toys. So perfect example, you get to say, it's cleanup time now. Would you like to listen to Susie Q music or this kind of music for cleanup, right? I can help you. Do you want to do the blocks or the this? Or, you know, like so it becomes a partnership conversation, because really what you want to do is build the skill. And in the Montessori classroom, part of why it works so well is they're given a lesson on how to do everything with the adult initially, right? The adult shows them exactly how to do it. Does that help? Sure. She fades away. Yeah, you go and get her. I noticed that you finished. You left. We're not finished.
I tried.
Right? Like, that's accountability. Listen, how long does it take you to learn a new language? Years. You're asking them to learn new skills. Really, you're asking them to learn new skills. It's going to take repeat work. And the way we hold the chores makes a big difference on how they think about them. If we have it that, oh my God, I have to clean the house, I have to do that, or you have to clean up, they're going to carry that too, right? So for us, it's really about how, oh, great, we get to create order in here now, right? Now, one of the things I will tell you, and this is a natural consequence, I do not believe in punishments, but I was really clear with my children that they can only have as many things as they can be responsible for. So if it's a huge mess in there, it is overwhelming to clean up a huge mess. So then you take out 6 or 7 things, and then you only have in the prepared environment 4 or 5 things out at a time. So if they're all out, it's not so hard to put back until it's an amount they can actually manage. I will say though, that one of the things that I do find works is I recognize with my girls, first of all, kids have way too much stuff now, okay? It is so much to manage, right? So we just talk about it from that framework. Like, I think you have way too much to manage here. I'm putting some in the basement so that you don't have, like, it's overwhelming. I'd be overwhelmed by this too, right? And so then it reduces to the amount that they can actually manage. And it's much easier to clean up. Right. It's easier, and they get to pick the things. It's not like you're picking. You just say, it's so much easier to manage, right? Does that help? And playing with it as much as you can, right? Having it be that you're bringing, and that's actually part of the creatively approaching the situation, right? There's no one size fits all for any of it. You have to know your children and know what's going to work. But for example, a couple of nights ago, my oldest was giving me that like teenage thing, that face. And I was like, I just want to show you the face you're giving me. You're doing this at me. And I don't know I'm afraid it's going to get frozen like this, and I was playing with her and she started laughing and, we just went back to enjoying each other. But like, it was bringing play and not that make wrong to it, and being creative and enjoying the process of, and she could have been like, Mom, get out of my space. But she knows that the approach is about love. It's different. There was no make wrong in it for me. We human beings, as soon as you make us wrong, it's over, right? That's when we get into power struggles. Needed to be done. And you could say, we can't do anything else until this is taken care of. This is the task at hand. That's where the clarity and the firmness come in. Part of what Montessori teachers do so beautifully is they really are clear, kind, and firm. That's it, right? Clear, kind, and firm. Okay, and the other thing about creativity is the brain loves novelty. So being able to bring that kind of play into it really supports it. Teaching mindsight tools, there's an entire book on mindsight, so but basically, in mindsight is knowing your own brain, knowing how you feel. It's that self-awareness and teaching children how they feel, because they don't actually know. They don't know unless you say, I can see that you're upset. Then they check in. What's going on, right? Then they go and they start to learn themselves. So making sure that you're giving them those mindset. Now, that's what somebody was talking about, sharing their own emotions. I think that was you, Nicole, right? Making sure that they know they know you have emotions too. I'm frustrated, I'm angry, I need some space now. Please, it's not about them. It's that as human beings, we have these experiences. We created a peace corner in our house that they designed with holiday lights. It's not a time out zone where it's like you're in trouble. It's a place that they can go when they need to regroup and learn that skill. Okay, so I highly recommend them having a place that's their own, that they can go when they need to feel peaceful. Yes? They both have created it in their rooms. They have their own rooms, so they do. They have their own, but it could be a common space. It could be in the living room. It could be wherever really they can go to find their own grounding, right? And quiet. Yes. It's well, they see me working. I call it my morning work. I have a place where I meditate and I journal and I do that, so they know and honestly, I will tell you, we did this a lot more when they were younger because they needed a place to go to feel that way. Now they do it wherever they are. So they'll get out their journal if they're upset. They've learned those skills of how to navigate that. Whenever they feel like they need it. You can recommend it. You could say, do you want to take some time to yourself? But it's not, you have to go there. It's a place where they can go to recoup. You may have some things to draw with. You may have a book about peace. You could have music there that's soothing. You're teaching them the skills that many adults don't have about how to manage their emotions. And what do they do to manage their emotions? Yes?
I think that's kind of similar, like with the mission process with testing.
Yeah. Yep. Yep. Mm-hmm. They do. They love that. I do too. I love the huggle. I've never been in there, but I would love one in my house. Are you kidding me? So, your jobs, okay, and then I'm going to wrap up and we'll do any questions you have. You're always thinking long term. Now, I know there are moments where it's about surviving. It is. There's survival, but most of the time with parenting, when we're not having to meet just that immediate need of, I have a meeting at 9 o'clock, I got to get out the door, it's got to be long-term thought. And how are you building them? Who's the human that you're helping grow? Okay? Love the child you have, where it's not our job to change them, it's our job to educate them, it's our job to support them in their growth, but it is not our job to make them a different person, right? Be a partner in their self-construction. Part of what happens when we go to domination is we stop being their partner. I have never chosen to partner with people who dominate me, ever. Most people don't, right? So for us to be their partner, we have to come in and treat them with that respect of partnership. And then this is another one, and this is a big piece of Montessori, but we have to teach them to be responsible. They have to learn to be responsible for themselves, for their communities. And so that's a big piece of this as well with the discipline. It's not letting them run around, do whatever they want, eat 16 cookies at the holiday party at night. Like, that's on you. I wouldn't recommend that. But, it's, and for the environment. So I'm going to have you, one of the things I really want to do is make sure, I'm going to go around and have each of you say one thing that you want to make sure that you take away. Whatever you speak, you will remember, right? And there's been a lot here today. For some of you, this really aligns with what you're already doing. For some of you, this is like a big shift of how you think. So I'd love to have you share one thing that you'd like to take away from today. I mean, I found Hand in Hand 4 years ago. And I will tell you, so when I came to Hand in Hand, the training, I was, here I am, I'm a Montessori head of school, I have 2 Montessori credentials, I can run a great classroom, and I didn't have a connection with my oldest, who at the time was, I think 9 or 10, like that connection, we had nice, but there wasn't, and I had this vision for my home and my girls getting older, that we were going to be a close family who loved each other and tended to each other and really. And I have a couple friends who built that with their children, and I knew that the track I was on, she was closing me out, and it was not going to be that vision for the future. And so when they said they wanted to bring Hand in Hand to Greenspring, I read the tools, and I was like, this is a crock. There's no way they're going to reinforce the negative behavior, and there's no independence. How are they going to build emotional independence if I'm there with, like, the whole thing, right? So I get on the phone with the woman, and we do a Zoom call, and I was talking to her younger sister about, we had just gone out, and to tell the girls that there's no Santa, I take them out, have a cup of hot chocolate, and let them know that Santa is actually the Santa spirit, and it's the spirit of Christmas, and it's the spirit of giving, and that we all are Santa, right? And so we were talking about that when we got home, and my oldest got really upset. I hate it when you talk about that there's no Santa Claus. That you just destroy Christmas for us, right? And she storms off, and she goes and she slams her door. Well, Tamara from the day before would have been like, well, apparently she needs some time to herself, and let her be. Right? Which is where she learned to stop, like, go be by yourself. You're going to have any emotion that's negative and impacts me. And so I got on my Hand in Hand. I said, I'm going to try this. I'm going to see how it goes. So I went in there, and I sat down on her bed. She looked at me. She's waiting to hear my coaching, right? We don't act like that if you get upset. I said, you seem really upset. I swear to God, she went like this. Like, who is this person, right? I still remember her looking at me like, what? Who are you? And she didn't trust it, and she was quiet, and I just sat there. She kept looking at me, waiting for me to leave, like, right? I just sat there. You're really frustrated. I'm here when you're ready. It took about 20 minutes, and then she started talking, and she said, look at me, like, it's made such a difference in our lives. She said, I just don't want to grow up. I'm really scared about growing up. I'm worried that I'm not going to be good at being a grown-up. And, right, so here's this like really powerful thing that I would have not known, I would have not heard her, I would have not understood my child because I would have let her isolate herself. And we talked, I said, I fully understand that feeling. I get it. I didn't try to talk her out of it. I just was with her. And then, so it took about another 10 minutes, and I said, so are you ready to come out? And she said, yeah, I'm ready. And she followed me around the house for 3 days. She literally, this was a child who had isolated herself and was so on her own at this point at 10. And she followed me around the house for 3 days, like literally like this. Like wherever I was, she was right there. Like, oh, hi, okay. Well, did you want to help with let's do this together. Let's do this together. And since that day, our relationship is connection. Like it was like that. There has been no, not that she doesn't give me faces or get frustrated, but there's love and there's connection, and we're in it together for her well-being and for her, and she knows it. She knows I'm on her side. She knows I'm not interested in dominating her or forcing, that it's about her development, and she has a partner. And she hasn't become a disrespectful teen. All the stuff that people talk about with their teenagers is not present in our home. Now, I don't know if it's just her. I'm not saying, I tell you what, I thought I was a great mom initially, and then I had my second one who came out as a completely different human being, and I got to realize it was, they are who they are. But that was the gift, to be in partnership with her and to have that present. So, all right, it is 11:15, almost on the nose. We have some articles for you in the back. We will send you a survey. If you're signed up, we'll send you a survey for the class. We'd love your feedback on it. Thank you for spending time with us today. I hope that this was valuable to you, and thank you for your commitment to your children, because really, they're our future. So, thank you.